You're at a party, the music's playing, people are laughing, someone's telling a story and everyone leans in like they're watching a movie. You're standing there too. You're nodding, you're smiling at the right times, but inside, you feel like you're watching behind a thick piece of glass. You can see them, you can hear them, but you can't feel them. It's like there's an invisible barrier between you and everyone else. And the strangest part? No one notices because you've gotten really good at pretending. So you stay for an hour, maybe two. You laugh when they laugh. You contribute when it feels safe. But the whole time, there's this voice in your head whispering, you don't belong here. Finally, you make an excuse. You say you're tired, you say you have an early morning, and you leave. And the second you close your car door, something shifts. Your chest loosens, your shoulders drop. You can finally breathe again. Not because the party was bad, not because the people were mean, but because you were performing. And now, alone in your car, driving through quiet streets, you finally feel like yourself again. If that feeling is familiar to you, if you've lived that moment over and over, you need to hear this. You're not broken. You're not antisocial, and you're not just an introvert. You might be something psychiatrists are now calling an introvert. The term Otrovert was created by Dr. Rami Kaminsky, a psychiatrist who kept noticing the same pattern in his practice. He'd meet people who weren't shy, they weren't anxious, they had friends, they had social lives, but they all described the same feeling. No matter where they went, they felt like outsiders. The word comes from otro, which means other in Spanish, and that's the key. Otroverts don't just feel different, they feel like the other, the guest, the observer, the person who's always slightly outside the circle. Now here's where people get confused. They think, oh, so it's just introversion, but it's not. Let me explain. Introverts have a battery problem. Socializing drains them. After a party, they need to recharge alone. But put an introvert in the right group, people they trust, people they love, and they can feel totally at home. They belong. They just need bricks. Otroverts don't have a battery problem. They have an identity problem. Even when they're energized, even when they like the people around them, they still feel like they're visiting someone else's world, like they're tourists in every room they walk into. And it's not social anxiety either. Social anxiety is fear. Fear of being judged, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of rejection. Otroverts aren't necessarily afraid, they're just detached. They can walk into a room full of people and feel completely calm, but they also feel like they're watching a play they're not really part of. It's not about fear, it's not about energy, it's about belonging, or rather the lack of it.
Here's the thing most introverts don't realize. This didn't start when you became an adult. It started way earlier, probably in childhood. Think back. Were you a kid on the playground who floated between groups but never really joined one? Maybe you'd play with the soccer kids for a while, then you'd wander over to the kids drawing with chalk. Then you'd sit on the swings by yourself watching everyone else. You weren't lonely exactly, you just didn't feel the pull to stay anywhere. Or maybe it happened in middle school. Everyone else seemed to know who their people were. They had their lunch table, their inside jokes, their matching backpacks or bracelets or whatever the trend was. And you could sit with them, you could laugh with them, but you never felt like you were in it. High school was probably worse, because by then the cliques were set in stone. And you were the person everyone liked, but no one claimed. You were friendly with the athletes, the nerds, the artists, the loners, but you didn't belong to any of them. And here's the kicker. You didn't even want to, because something in you resisted it. You didn't want to be boxed in. You didn't want to wear the uniform, literal or emotional, that came with being part of a group. So you stayed on the edges, and people thought you were mysterious or independent or just doing your own thing. But inside, you wondered, why don't I feel what they feel? Why doesn't belonging matter to me the way it matters to them? The answer is simple. You were born an introvert, and trying to force yourself into a tribe was always going to feel like wearing shoes that didn't fit.
Let's talk about the signs, because once you see them, you can't unsee them. Sign 1. You feel like a guest everywhere, even at work. Imagine this. You've been at your job for 2 years. You know everyone's names, you go to the meetings, you reply to the Slack messages, you even grab lunch with coworkers sometimes. But when they plan the office happy hour, you feel dread. Not because you don't like them, but because you know you'll spend the whole night performing, smiling, nodding, pretending to care about the company gossip. And when they take a group photo, you're in it. But when you look at the picture later, you think, I look like I was photoshopped in. That's the guest mentality. You're there, but you're not of it. You can participate, but you can't fully inhabit the space. And no matter how long you stay, you'll always feel like you're visiting. Sign 2. You'd rather have one deep conversation than 10 shallow ones. Let's say you're on a first date or catching up with a friend, and instead of small talk, weather, weekend plans, surface stuff, you go deep. You ask them what they're afraid of, what keeps them up at night, what they really want out of life. And when they answer honestly, when they let the walls down, you feel alive. That's where you thrive, in the one-on-one, in the raw, unfiltered, no performance required space. But put you at a networking event, a crowded bar, a group dinner where everyone's talking over each other, you shut down. Not because you're shy, but because group dynamics feel fake to you. You watch people mirror each other. You notice how they adjust their opinions to match the room. You see the performance, and it exhausts you. You don't want more people in your life. You want realer people. You'd trade 100 acquaintances for one person who actually sees you. Sign 3. You resist groupthink like it's poison. Here's a scenario. Everyone at the table agrees on something, a movie, a political opinion, a popular trend, and your first instinct isn't to agree, it's to question. Not because you want to argue, not because you're trying to be difficult, but because something in you refuses to follow the crowd just because it's the crowd. You notice when people change their opinions to fit in. You see when someone pretends to like something just to belong. And it doesn't make you angry. It makes you feel alone. Because you can't do that. You can't turn off your brain and just go with it. You have to think for yourself, even if it means standing alone, even if it means being the only one who says, I don't agree. This is why Otroverts often feel like outsiders, even in their groups, because they won't drink the Kool-Aid, they won't join the hive mind, and in a world that rewards conformity, that makes you dangerous.
Let's be honest. Being an outrovert isn't always empowering. Sometimes it's just lonely. Because the world is built for people who belong, for people who have a crew, a squad, a tribe. And when you don't have that, when you don't even want that in the traditional sense, people think something's wrong with you. They ask, why don't you come out more? And you don't know how to explain that going out feels like work. They say, you should put yourself out there. And you think, I am out there. I'm just not in there. And the worst part? You start to wonder if they're right, if maybe you are broken, if maybe you should try harder to fit in, to care about the group chat, to feel excited about the reunion, to want what everyone else seems to want so naturally. But every time you try, it backfires, because you can't fake it. Not long term, not without losing yourself. So you end up in this strange middle ground. You're not a loner, you're not a hermit, but you're also not included. Not in the way that feels solid and real. And on your worst days, that hurts, because humans are wired for connection. And even though you don't need a tribe, you still need someone. And finding that someone, that one or two people who get you, feels impossibly hard. So if you're feeling that right now, I need you to hear this. The loneliness is real. The pain is valid. But it doesn't mean you're doing life wrong. It just means you're doing it differently. So, what do you do? How do you survive as an Otrovert in a world obsessed with belonging? First, stop auditioning. Stop trying to prove your worth including. Stop showing up to things you hate just to feel like you're part of something. You're not a supporting character in someone else's group. You're the main character in your own life. And that life doesn't have to look like theirs. Accept the guest role. Own it. You're the observer, the thinker, the one who sees what others miss. That's not a flaw. That's your lens. Second, invest in depth, not breadth. You don't need 20 friends. You need 2 or 3 people who see you, who don't drain you, who make you feel like you can take the mask off. Find those people. Protect those relationships. Let everything else be background noise. And third, this is the most important part, realize that your outsider status is a superpower. Think about the people who changed the world, the artists, the writers, the inventors, the rebels. Most of them were Otroverts. They didn't follow the crowd. They didn't care about fitting in. They saw things differently because they stood apart. You have that same gift. While everyone else is busy conforming, you're thinking independently. You're questioning. You're creating. You're seeing. That's rare. That's valuable. That's dangerous in the best possible way. So, stop trying to fix yourself. Stop trying to become someone who fits neatly into a group, because the world doesn't need more people who fit in. It needs more people like you, people who think for themselves, who stand alone without apology, who build their own world instead of squeezing into someone else's. You're not broken. You're not missing something. You're an Otrovert, and that's not a diagnosis. It's a superpower. Own it.